crying all the time. I was upset, even though we were living on the beach and it was great. In this moment, I was just thinking, I just want to climb it. This is like, wow, empowering. I climbed this thing. And then I didn't even know that there was something called sending until I started climbing with you guys. And then it was like, Guy, I kind of feel bad about myself because I'm supposed to climb this without taking or falling. I was just feeling really good about myself that I was just out here.
Your complicated relationship with climbing is eventually going to teach you something about yourself. And maybe it takes you 5 years, but eventually you realize that, oh, wow, I really was tied up in external definitions of success.
Climbing became the bane of our marriage. A month after Big Sur, we packed the RV again. Besides craving new landscapes, I had a personal mission. I wanted to learn how to lead climb. Rock climbing came into my life by accident. One November afternoon in 2014, I arrived early for a yoga class and I started scrolling through Groupon. I needed some Christmas ideas. A deal for outdoor rock climbing popped up. I had never heard of rock climbing, even indoor rock climbing. But it sounded adventurous, so I bought it. When I got home and told Victor, guess what? We're going rock climbing this weekend. He just gave me his trademark grin and said, sure. Our guide met us at Mission Trails, led us up this steep, dusty 1 mile trail to a towering wall of rock. It was more actually like a really giant boulder in retrospect, but it looked huge at the time. I grew up as a tomboy, so scrambling over rocks felt totally natural to me. Actually, the higher I climbed, the more alive I felt. As I climbed, our guide casually mentioned that, hey, my girlfriend and I just spent a year living out of our Prius, traveling the country to climb. Something in me shifted. Is that possible? Could we do that as a family? As Abraham Hicks would say, I launched a rocket of desire into the quantum and the universe began rearranging everything to make it happen. Victor, on the other hand, was tense, gripping every hold like it might betray him. He had no idea that one spontaneous Groupon purchase was going to change the rest of his life. If our Big Sur trip had cracked the door open to adventure, this journey blew it wide open. Arizona, Colorado, Utah, 3 weeks, thousands of miles, and enough memories to fill a lifetime. We weren't just traveling anymore. We were learning to live differently. Each climb, storm, and sleepless night pushed us closer together while forcing me to confront the truth. I wasn't chasing perfect vacations. I was chasing a whole new way of living. Our first stop was the pit in Flagstaff, Arizona. I'd set top ropes up before, but now I wanted to learn how to lead climb. I had to set up my anchors and clean the route. Climbing technically is one of the safest sports when it's done right, if you're meticulous and methodical. I am neither of these. So the night before, I sat by the campfire scribbling steps. Actually, I looked up on a YouTube video and then I scribbled the steps onto an index card. How to set up my anchor, the order in which you clean the route, which basically means you have to untie yourself from the wall, or anchor yourself in, untie, retie in when you're 100 feet high. I tucked it into my pants pocket just in case. The next morning, with the wind gusting, I felt fear claw at my nerves. I was shaky, but once I started, my focus sharpened. Move by move, I built the anchor, rappelled down without even pulling out my note card. When my feet hit the ground, I felt invincible. I found something I didn't know I was missing, a new outlet for grit, for focus, and trust.
We're Nomads with a Purpose, a family of 7 that hit the road back in 2015 to chase epic climbs, trails, powder, waves, and bucket list destinations. 10 years later, we're still living the dream. From adventure travel guides to unschooling, RV life, self-development, and family connection, we're here to inspire you to live boldly and defy the norm.
Okay, so, you remember that day?
At the pit, I do remember a little bit. I mean, I just followed top ropes at the time, so I do remember being in the pit. I don't remember having any distinct moment, though, because you were the rope grin at the time. I was just top rope tough guy that followed. I was like, this is so fun.
You have to be like a little ditzy, like, okay. What do you think about though, like when you read this? Gabby's reading my book, editing it, and she knows me better than anybody in the world. Um, truth, right? Like you kind of remember.
I mean, I remember the first time I cleaned her out, and it's like it's the scariest thing ever because I mean, it's so silly that it's scary, but I think that goes to show how much self-doubt people have all the time, like just as a baseline, because there's really only 3 steps to cleaning a route, and it's only scary because if you for some reason did it in the wrong order, you are literally attached to nothing, hanging like you have 0 rope attached to you anymore, you have no belayer, you have no anchor above you. Like if you were to somehow do it in the wrong order, you're totally screwed. But like it would be so hard to do it in the wrong order because you attach yourself to the rock. And now you have that is your anchor.
And you test it.
And as long as you do that part correctly, then the next is just don't drop your rope. As long as you anchor into the rock and don't drop the rope by not tying it to your harness, then that's literally the 2 main things you can't mess up. But there's so much doubt. You get up there and you're like, what if I do it wrong? Am I forgetting a step? Am I forgetting?
Yeah. Gabby is an insane climber and she's the rope gun. And so I started this trajectory of chasing. It's like, wow, I'm going to be a rock climber and I set ropes. And the fact is I'm pretty darn mediocre. But Gabby sets like incredible routes for us. She's the person who's leading us to everything, like both to what we're going to climb and leads us up the wall. I'm just the support system now. And while I am mediocre, like I'm gradually pushing myself now. You're starting to see it. Like I'm starting to, but we're talking, this was 2015, 11 years from this to where I go, oh, wow, I don't have this in my life anymore. I don't have this like, oh man, what rock could we go find? I want it back, but we don't have it. So I was thinking about how, like, share the truth, or share your perception and the thoughts that you have when you read this in like both like, wow, I'm so grateful that my mom got into this because it brings me so much joy. Oh, I'm probably so sad that my mom lost a lot of this along the way. Wow, I'm really excited that maybe we could actually get it back in the next year or two. And maybe even some of the like this has brought like a lot of rock climbing in general has brought a lot of heartache for us.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think you think about climbing back then and it was just so, I wouldn't say pure is maybe like a strong word, but you're kind of just like, I'm kind of good at this thing. And this is kind of crazy what we're doing as opposed to like, I mean, technically for both of us, we came from a lot of being athletic, but being in very organized sports before. It's like I'd come from gymnastics and soccer where there's so many rules to it and like you always are doing something wrong. And when it came to rock climbing, you couldn't do anything wrong until eventually you realize that there's the peer pressure of like what is the right way to rock climb. And that ended up becoming this whole arc that I'm actually really grateful for, because I think without rock climbing, there's absolutely no way I would have recognized that I let other people's definitions of success influence my sense of self-worth. And like it maybe our lifestyle alone would have done that, but I think without rock climbing, I wouldn't have, because I wouldn't have literally been there on the rock. Because at first, we just went rock climbing. We didn't know any of the terminology. We didn't know it mattered that if you hung on the rock, that was supposedly a bad thing. We didn't know that like you were supposed to climb harder, really. We just climbed. And then in our time in San Diego, we started climbing at the gym. And that, I think, was really the only time I personally started realizing that there were things about rock climbing that people were aspiring toward, and that climbing a route without hanging or falling was a big deal. And then through that, recognize that I was so worried then about trying to be a good rock climber from that moment on. But in the end, it's like you end up having to come full circle and you go, oh, wow, without that, I probably would not have realized that about myself. And then it is interesting because now we were just saying on the drive back from Seaside how climbing is now still one of the most fun arenas of life, because you can just be there on the rock and you can kind of just sit there and go, this is interesting that I'm scared right now. But then you can, like, it's this in a way, a safe place to play around with your fear.
Yeah.
But life doesn't feel like that a lot of times. Like life doesn't feel like a safe place to play around with fear.
I love it. Rock climbing is, to me, like the best thing in the world. But it, like Gabby's saying, it could be the worst thing because when you're new at it, it's just you versus your fears. It's you versus the rock, but the rock just is representing your fears. And so, but you actually can't go do it alone unless you're going to go bouldering. In rock climbing that we're talking about, sport climbing, you need a belayer. So you actually always have to have some form of trusting somebody else. Mm-hmm. And there are some rules there with belaying that do, like, you really have somebody's life in your hands. But at the same time, you'd have to be pretty dumb to drop somebody. When you're lead climbing, it's a little more nuanced. But there's nothing like that in life. There's nothing else that you get to just, because everything else is left to other people's expectations. Like surfing, you're dealing with so many other people's. Yeah, there might be rules on who catches, but there's no rules in who gets to paddle out to the peak again. Mm-hmm. So you're really, like, surfing's in some ways the worst sport because you are at the mercy of other people's self-awareness. Whereas in rock climbing, you're only at the mercy of your own self-awareness.
Yeah. It's literally you against you. Yes, which is so cool. I mean, I think climbing mountains is like that too. Even if you're just hiking a big mountain, you can kind of confront that a little. But then you end up in the challenge of, I think all of those sports end up, you end up in the stratosphere, that competitive nature that ends up coming out in all of those sports. And I think, I mean, you and I have never really cared about that, but I think that ends up being the thing that sucks people in. Even once they're in that, you're in this amazing sport where you can now face yourself, you can go climb out and face yourself, and then you end up getting sucked back into a competing against yourself. There's a difference between facing yourself and competing against yourself that I don't think.
Yeah, can you give a description in case somebody's...
Yeah, I think facing yourself is a little bit more about, kind of what comes up, because most of our lives are subconscious, whether you want to call it 95% of our brain is subconscious. So much is subconscious in going on under the surface. And it's really hard, even if you have the best intentions to want to bring that to the surface. You got to really be put out on the edge to see what's there. And I think that's what's cool about climbing. You literally get put out on the edge and then you see what's there. And generally, whatever thoughts come to mind when you're on a rock wall, like the limiting thoughts that come into your mind on a day-by-day, minute-by-minute basis. And so it's like, oh, well, it's cool if you can go into that facing yourself. But if you're competing against yourself, there's a little bit of a difference, because then you are looking at, I was just writing about equanimity this morning, and equanimity is all the idea that there's no such thing as bad or good. And so in order to compare yourself and compete against yourself, you are therefore saying your past self was bad. In order to be better, your past self was bad. And if you're doing worse now compared to your previous self, regardless, you're still placing the label of bad on either now or then.
I was thinking too, you said on the wall, because I'm not that great of a climber. And my second biggest fear is literally scratched up. Like, I don't want to fall. Like, it will hurt. I'm not afraid like that I'm going to fall. But most things that I'm climbing, it's like, well, there's rocks poking out. If I fall here, it's going to hurt. I'm going to or scratching my skin and it taking so long. But you'll say, you probably know what my biggest fear is, because when I push myself to something harder that if I fell on, it wouldn't hurt, then it is probably not being good enough. Huh?
Or I think your struggle is because you've described to me in the past that the worst is the feeling right before you're going to fall. It's not falling. Once you're in the air, it's fine.
Oh, it's losing control.
Losing control.
Yeah.
It's the moment where it slips away from you that you are actually not capable of pushing any further, which is okay, because that's how you get stronger. Like literally inclined, that's how you get stronger.
Right.
Yeah. But it's like the moment where you feel your muscles, I am not in control anymore. I'm like, literally, the lactic acid is too much and I cannot control it anymore.
So I wonder if then, going back to the equanimity, I wonder if it is that I don't have many places in my life that I push past that. I usually feel good enough because I'm usually in control. Mm-hmm. I usually don't I don't push something to I'm just trying to think of things that I might push to that limit. I do somehow like, oh, well, that was probably a bad decision. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but not like I am bad. Or I
think it's hard because I don't think I am bad, I think, is an extreme version of people thinking they're not good enough.
Yeah.
I think it's just that it can come in a different variety of beliefs. Like your I'm not good enough belief can be supported by multiple different structures that are holding up that belief. And it could be like for me, it's more that gene key of expectation that I should, if I have been doing this for this long and I'm competing with my past self, it's not coming from my past self was bad. I look back and be like, she was pretty good for 16. Like, It's not that I look at it like that. It's more that I go now like, well, 4 or 5 years of rock climbing, I should be here and I'm right here. So it's not even coming from like, I think that I was bad at any point. It's more coming from probably what your unique shadow
an expectation. That's interesting. So, okay, to wrap this one up, because I just wanted to like touch on rock climbing and what do you think? You said how this is me practicing my Stephen Diary of a CEO with Stephen's name.
Stephen Bartlett.
How do you like my Stephen Bartlett? When you like look at the camera for a second? Okay. So I need to practice my English accent. So, Gabby, I see you're saying that we started. Actually, I'm still pretty clueless about the things you're talking about, the shoulds in rock climbing, and that there's all these like, this is how you're supposed to climb. I'm pretty sure I'm still fish out of water when I'm climbing. It's a whole thing that I just love to traverse. And I like literally, if I don't push myself because I'm scared, I actually inadvertently do things that are way more risky in my stupidity. I don't know. I don't know. I just like, I feel competent scrambling. I don't feel, I guess I lose control. Say if I'm on an 11B climb that's safe to fall on, but I might get pumped out on. I don't like the loss of control. Whereas if I'm going to traverse a route and I have good handholds, I like because it's actually testing my control. I like that. I'm addicted to that.
Here I am at the bottom belaying her, and it's like, oh my, if she messes up in this situation, it's going to be so bad. The probability is low, but if it works.
It's true. And I think that's what it is. In some ways, I should get into more like 5-3 free soloing, where it's just like literally scramble. Well, it's like Mount Superior.
Yeah.
And even like Kinasava. But as soon as I have to do that as a mom, it's so hard for me. Anyways, you said though, what is the shoulds? What are these like, or what is it that like you went into this arena from just climbing with me and then started climbing with actual climbers, and like what? Teach me, because I don't know it. Teach the audience. Like, what is it that like kind of said like, oh, you're doing it wrong. This is how you're supposed to do it, and then maybe you'd say like where that like how that kind of took you down a negative path back to not too much detail, but like a negative self-belief, negative maybe some values that you came back to like, hey, well, I'm gonna discard that.
I mean, I think it starts so it's interesting how you end up adopting things because it's so subtle at first, because it's literally just started with recognizing that people would celebrated sending. That was it. You celebrate. Ascend is climbing something clean without falling or hanging, because when you're climbing, for those who aren't familiar, it's like you can take up the rope, pull the slack out of the system, and create a pulley system where you're just hanging on the route whenever your bolt's above you. So you can hang on a route most of the time, as long as you quit while you're below, or you can take a fall. Even it's totally safe to take falls on sport routes. And yeah, so it just starts by like, okay, that's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. I want to be good. Most of my life I'm kind of the best, so I mean, I should do that too. Like, so then you start thinking like, well, I'm probably capable of that. And then little by little, like, you realize that you can do that, and then you're like, well, I could be better, and over time eventually you've just fallen into like that whole belief of like, I could be better based on this definition of what would give me a sense of being.
I mean, it's kind of like the parallel schooling, the school system, going
Yeah.
to sending your kids to college. This is what we should do. Like, what do you mean you
Yeah.
homeschool? I mean, let's keep in mind, like, we homeschooled way before it was cool, but like, you homeschool? Oh my, what about friends? Well, what about social circles? What about getting into college? Like, how are they going to have a job? And it's like all those shoulds that made most people not homeschool, even if it felt right. Like climbing for us, for me, it just feels right to be like, in this moment, I was just thinking, I just want to climb it. This is like, wow, empowering. I climbed this thing. And then I didn't even know that there was something called sending until I started climbing with you guys. And then it was like, Guy, I kind of feel bad about myself because I'm supposed to climb this without taking or falling. I was just feeling really good about myself that I was just out here. I was like, this is great. And now it's like, gosh, I feel sheepish. Maybe I'll just leave.
Yeah.
And it kind of pushes you out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially because I think, when it would have been better if I was bad at climbing and realized
This
that.
is true.
Yeah. But it was because I was like kind of came naturally to some extent. That I do remember that year, 2020 or 2020, I think. I went to Florida. I think it was 2020.
When we went to
2021.
Florida?
We
Like
went
the red
on the
too?
way to Kentucky, yeah.
That was 2021.
Okay, 2021 was essentially kind of the worst year of climbing for me because I hadn't had enough practice to recognize how many failures it would take to get good. This very like athlete world. And like, but then I was also like aware enough of what was supposed to be done. So then it just constantly felt like you were like inadequate as a climber. And then that was really the worst. And then kind of the years that followed that specifically for climbing ended up being kind of a necessary learning progression purely from a climbing perspective. But simultaneously from a social perspective, they interacted poorly because, I think it's cool that people can be friends on the basis of a shared interest. But I pretty much picked the worst town in the world to being into climbing with because any other climbing town I've been to since then has been so welcoming and friendly. And I pretty much lived in Lander, Wyoming for a while, where unless you are an elite level climber, you're not a climber. Like you had to generally be a 5'13" climber, which for those who aren't familiar with climbing, that is like the equivalent of paddling out that's like trying to swim alongside Michael Phelps to an extent.
Paddling out, being able to be a big wave surfer.
Yeah,
and paddle out at Mavericks.
Yeah. And it's like, even if you were climbing like very well, you were like, oh, I guess I don't fit in because I'm not a 5'13" climber.
And we're talking like she's a solid 5'12" climber. And in the end, that just made you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah. And and then it was essentially my first kind of opportunity to have a social circle since I was 14 or 15 years old. And having that be my first social circle where you were constantly, literally not good enough to fit in with everyone was such a reaffirming process of like that my worth was associated with how well I do at things and not at all indicative of like
how your worth is how well you affirm other people's value of what they think they're worthy based on.
Definitely, yeah. Which is a complicated cycle. But in the end, it's like, okay, well, if you can go through, it wasn't great to work through those two parallels at the same time socially and then how I approached climbing. Yeah. But in the end, like once they separated themselves enough, I think climbing actually was like a good phase of like, still would tell anyone to rock climb because in the end, your complicated relationship with climbing is eventually going to teach you something about yourself. And maybe it takes you 5 years, but eventually you realize that, oh, wow, I really was tied up in external definitions of success.
We have a saying, you and I, that all obstacles are opportunities. So, I mean, I know, so I asked you to start recording with me. I know your voice really matters. without that experience, you wouldn't have the wisdom to share. So, what did you learn from it all? What are you grateful for it? Maybe a little less of it.
I think, okay, I guess from a climate from a climate perspective, I'm really grateful that I learned how many times you have to fail to just enjoy the process. Because if you call things success and failure, you're just never going to be happy. Like, that's simple, and I feel like that's just a recurring thing that sometimes I have to be reminded of all the time. But I'm glad I went through that. From a social perspective, I mean, it is weird how I went through, like, as a teenager in high school, confronting the feeling of rejection and not fitting in, and then eventually come around to, like, well, I've got to fit in somewhere, or like I've got to interact with people at some point. And coming to realize that, oh, you're kind of always, it's okay to always be the outcast. Like, it really is okay, because people have been given this set of values that were handed to them in childhood. Most, pretty much 99.9% of the world probably has this bad set of values. And you'll probably never find a circle where it's like, oh, wow, everyone has the same values that I do. Everyone has chosen to have intrinsic values and really work on themselves. That's not the world we live in. And that's probably better to come to acceptance of that and recognize that you're the most important person in your life. Yeah. And I think, through that whole process, I realized that, like, the only person that matters is what I think of myself, not what other people think of me. And it's not easy, and you're always going to enter that room and be like, I don't fit in here. And that's probably a good thing if you don't. I think if you don't. Yeah.
All right, so that wraps up half of page 47 of 151. So now you know where rock climbing kind of started for me, and why. Well, first, how it changed me. How that little sentence of our friend Caleb Lichtenberg, he runs Stoneman Climbing in Phoenix, Arizona. If you are ever in Phoenix, I highly recommend rock climbing with him, because maybe he too will change your life like he did for me. I'm so grateful for it's just amazing how the law of attraction has worked for me in my life. I know I set an intention before I ever found that Groupon that I needed a change in my life. And the universe conspired to make it so that I just happened to find that Groupon. If I hadn't jumped on it and seen where and been open to receive, and then to hear the guy say, I lived in a Prius. What? You traveled in a Prius? Jeez, we could do that in an RV. You believe that you're here on a self-growth journey, then the stories that we're going to be sharing, I hope, help you find what the Groupon is for you to discover and to take that next step.